This is, like I said, the third part. So this time we are looking at visuals and graphics. So in the first webinar of this series, we looked at styles and structure. So our aim throughout the whole of this series has been to create a template within Word that can be used by multiple users within our organization. We're creating quite a generic template just because I want to show you how to do different things, but it might be that you're setting up a couple of different ones, that maybe a letter template, a document template, more of a marketing branding template. But we're just kind of setting up a general one in these webinars. And in the first session, we looked at styles and structure. So we created like title styles, subheading styles that individuals could use, and we also set up a multi-level list numbered style as well. And then in the session that we held 2 weeks ago, we looked at layout and navigation. So we learned about section breaks and how we need to use section breaks within a template if we want different formatting throughout the template. So for example, if we wanted different headers and footers, if we wanted perhaps the page numbering to start at a particular point rather than from page one, if we wanted maybe one single landscape page within a document that's predominantly portrait pages, and we need to use those section breaks. So we looked at that, and we also set up a very basic header and footer in the last session. So we haven't added any graphics to those yet, but we've just added like space for a document title and an updating date as well. This image here is to show you what we'll have by the end of today, or something very, very similar, and that's what we're aiming for. So we're going to be adding in the graphics, so things like the cover page. We're going to add some graphics into the header just to separate it a little bit from the main bulk of the document. We're going to add some nice quote boxes that users can easily insert into the document. We'll create another style, which is this one here, which can just, again, be easily applied by the user to create a bit of emphasis to a particular paragraph. And we're also going to briefly look at creating or kind of editing images as well, kind of inserting stock images in there. So like I said last time, we added the section breaks, we created a basic header and footer, and we created the table of contents as well. So we set up that table of contents so it was automatically bringing in those styles that we wanted included within that table of contents, and again setting it all up so that when users are accessing the template, all they have to do is update that table of contents. They won't need to go in and edit it or change any of the settings. So learning objectives for today, we're going to create a cover page, including placeholders for text and an image. We are going to add some sample graphics. So we're going to show you how to insert some images, some text boxes. We're going to add some graphics to the header, including a logo and like a little kind of line border along the bottom. We're going to create additional sample graphics and visuals, so we'll look at columns, we'll also look at tables as well. And then at the end, we are going to kind of understand what the next steps are. So once we have that finalized template and we're ready to release that, where's the best place to store it? How are we going to make sure that people aren't accidentally overwriting the template? And there's a few different options that we can go about that. We will be looking at lots of different graphics today. Obviously, it might be that when you're creating a template, you think, oh, I don't need a table, I don't need a column. That's absolutely fine. We're just going to go through them. And then obviously it might be that in your template, you have one or two things. Because obviously what you don't want to do is put lots and lots of things onto a template and just completely overwhelm the user. They open it and there's columns and tables and pictures and they don't know where to start. So obviously, as always, we're trying to keep it as simple and as user-friendly as possible. So let's jump right into it. So this is our template that we finished off with last session. So we've got a blank page for our cover page, which is what we'll start on first. Then on our second page, we have our table of contents. On our third page, we have our header. We have examples of the styles. Remember, we have our styles saved up here, so users can easily click on those to access them. We're not going to do anything with this page today, but we have our multi-level numbering style, which again users can access from the top here, and then we've got the end of the document. And again, we set up our page numbering, so it is starting on that kind of first content page rather than on our cover page or on our table of contents. So let's have a look at the cover page to start with. I'm just going to remove that placeholder, so let's just get rid of that one. And we're going to go in and add a few different graphics and placeholders. I'm going to go into insert, and I'm going to be using text boxes just to add some placeholders in there for the users to go in and add add their document title, author, date, and so on. There are built-in text boxes, so absolutely you can use these if you want to. It's probably more likely that you'd want to start from scratch and go in and add your own formatting and your own kind of placement on the page. So what I'll do is I'll just draw a text box, and that will allow me just literally to drag and drop kind of a square onto the page just there. We want users to be able to go in and add in their document titles. So what I'll do is I'll literally just put a placeholder so that they know where their document title is going to be, and then also space for a subtitle as well. Obviously, they can delete the subtitle placeholder if it's not something they'll need. And then we can go in and format that so it will look exactly how we want it. So let's make it a bit larger. Maybe we'll put it like 48, make that a bit bigger. And I'm also going to change the color of the font as well. Again, and I think I mentioned this in the first session when we were looking at styles, is making sure that when you are, using graphics and branding and things like that, that you have those branding guidelines, and it might be from your marketing team or whoever runs it within your organization. So when we're applying the colors to this text, we're not just picking up, a preset color from here. We're actually going into more colors, and we're specifying whether it's the RGB or the hex code of our actual corporate colors, which I have written down on the left side because I can't remember them off by heart. 74 is our purple. There we go. Maybe I'll make that bold as well, just so it stands out. And then the subtitle, just make a bit larger as well. Maybe make that bold. I haven't got the colours for our corporate grey, so I'm just going to put it in like this for now. But obviously you would go in and set up that for maybe in like a secondary branded colour. I'm also going to remove the outline of this box because we don't need that outline. So what I'll do is I'll just go to the shape format. So whenever you select an image or a shape or some kind of graphic, you're going to see an additional tab here appear on the ribbon that isn't there if it's not selected. So we've got shape format, and again that allows us to change the fill colors, the outline, and so on. So what we'll do is we'll go to outline and we'll just remove that shape outline. In terms of the placement on the page, you'll notice that when I click and drag this around, you can see those green lines appear. These are your alignment guides. So they allow me to make sure if I hold it there, for example, that text box is aligned to the left margin and also at the bottom of wherever my header sits on that particular page. So I can just pop it there. You do have more specific sizing and placement options. So we can go to position and we can say, I want it, top left corner, I want it in the center at the top, and so on. And I can even go to more layout options, and I can set them up here. So again, we can make sure that the alignment is left to the margin, and that also it's at a particular position, at the top of the page or below a particular paragraph. For this one, I'll just use those alignment guides just to make sure that that's in place. I also want just a secondary text box where they'll be able to put in things like an author and a date. So I'm literally just going to copy and paste this box, and I'm going to pop it a bit further down. Again, I'm just going to pop it next to that margin there. And what we'll have in here instead will be the author and the date. And I'm just going to make these a bit smaller as well. Obviously, I'm doing this quite quickly, but you'd have a little bit more time to format it. Something like that. Okay, so they've got space to put that information. What I'd like to add in here too, just to make it look a little bit nicer, is I'd love to put a border down the left-hand side. So just down the margin on the left side, we can add a nice, just quick border. So I'm going to go into design and then page borders. And we've got these options for borders in here. If you're just looking for quite a simple border, so a line or a dashed line or like a double line, we're just going to use the box option, and then you can choose the style. So maybe we could do like a double line like that, and we can also choose the color. Now, because I've just recently put in that custom purple color, we can select that, and I can also go and maybe make it a little bit bigger. If I click OK now, what that will do is it will apply that whole box border, so all around the whole of the page, and it's also going to apply it to the whole document, which we don't want to do. So you can use these buttons here to toggle each side of that box on and off. So because I just want it on the left side, I'll make sure that that one is toggled on, and the rest are toggled off. And also when I come down here, I want to make sure that it's only being applied to this page. Now, again, this is another example where those section breaks come into play, because if I wanted it maybe across, I don't know, 3 pages and then it stops, we would need to add in a section break, and we would tell Word we only want the border to apply within this particular section. For this one, I'll do this section first page only, which just means it's just going to be on this page. The table of contents is in the same section because it's first page only. It's just going to apply to this page here. So I'll click OK, and that pops in that nice border, and then it stops underneath. Final thing I want to add in is a graphic. So I'm going to go to Insert, Pictures, and then this device because I have it saved locally. And I'm going to go to where am I? Grab it from here. Oh, I thought I had it there. Maybe not. There we go. I'll just use one of these. These are kind of our branded images. So we'll insert that one. There we go. And I can just pop it onto this page. What I'll do is, again, when you're selecting an image, this picture format ribbon is available, and we're able to wrap the text. So at the moment, it's in line with text, which means it's kind of sticking with the text. It's sticking to that particular paragraph where I've moved it to. If I change it to something like square, it gives me a little bit more freedom to move that around. What I actually want to do is be able to drag it so that it's right down in the corner here, and if it's formatted as square at the minute, it's not letting me do that. So I'm just going to change that to behind text, and that's going to allow me to put that placement right at the bottom there. And again, I can use those alignment guides. They're kind of allowing me to they're kind of sticking my cursor there so that that image is down in the bottom. I'm just going to zoom out so you can see what that looks like all together. We've got other options in this picture format area as well. So what I would probably do is make that more of a grayscale or a black and white. So under color, we can go into maybe this, if I do grayscale here, there we go. So there we go. We've got our cover page. So it's very easy for people to go in, just change the text in here. I've not added anything complicated. They don't have to click any buttons or anything. They're just coming in and typing over the top of that text. If I scroll down, I want to add a few more graphics onto this page here. The first thing we'll do, just kind of keeping with the theme of photos and images, is I do want to show you that under the Insert tab, Pictures, so before I selected this device, there is the option to select stock images. So obviously, again, you'd follow the kind of branding guidelines within your organization, but if they are happy for you to use stock images, these are available from Microsoft, and you don't have to worry about the licensing because they're included within your 365 license. So we can go into stock images. There's lots and lots of images here. I've used them in training kind of PowerPoints before. You can just type in your search term, so office skyline, and it will bring up, as you can see, all of these different images that we can add. Select the one you want, click insert, and then it will insert it into your document. Again, I would format this a little bit, maybe almost to give people a placeholder for an image, or just to show them how we kind of format that image within a template. And again, we can use that picture format ribbon. So what I might just do is crop, so we can crop the image a little bit. There we go. And again, I might just turn on that grayscale color. And then the other options we've got in here are things like artistic effects. You probably won't use too much. Transparency. So if you wanted to maybe just make that a little bit more transparent, it's not quite as bold and in your face. And under picture effects, we have things like maybe a little bit of a soft edge around the outside, so you can see that it's going from that to that. So it's just giving that little bit of a soft edge. Again, with images, it's not, you're not going to want to go overboard. You know, you're not going to be wanting to apply huge shadows and big borders and things like that, but sometimes little subtle things that just add a little bit more interest onto the page. So yes, we've got those picture effects, borders, transparency. This button here is really important as well. So if you are looking to create a template and it is a bit more of a branded, bit more of a marketing template, it's got quite a lot of images in, maybe it's got some full page images as well, some high quality images that you've imported, you might notice that obviously when you come to save that document, that file size is very, very large because of how many images it has inside. So you can click on any image in your document, and you can click the compress pictures button on the picture format tab, and it allows you to reduce the size of the file by reducing the images. Excuse me. So the first option is you could choose to only apply it to that single picture. So maybe if you just have one very large picture, you could just choose to apply it to that image. I'm going to turn that off, so it's going to apply to all of the images within my document. This one is a really nice, easy way to reduce the file size if you have cropped some of your images. So the way that the cropping works, because I used that cropping tool and I removed kind of that sky at the top of that image, in the background, Word is still saving that cropped area. So if I turn my crop back on, you'll notice that's still there, it's just hidden. Okay, so a quick way of compressing the size is to tick this option here, and it will delete that cropped area. So I can't go back and kind of uncrop it, but it means that it's no longer including that within that saved document. Here is where you can reduce the resolution of the images. So if, for example, you are producing a document and you know it's not going to be printed, but it's something you're going to be electronically sharing, we can maybe change that to print or even a web to reduce it slightly. And again, that's going to reduce the file size because it's reducing the quality of those images. You could either have perhaps a couple of versions. So maybe we've got like a version that you can print with the higher quality images, and then you've got maybe a web version or an email version. So we can choose on there, and then we can click OK, and then that will reduce the size of those images and therefore the size of the document. What I'd love to have in here as well, and I'll show you just kind of a screenshot of this on the PowerPoint, is like a quote box that users can easily go in and add some quotes, add some points of interest. So again, I'm going to use a text box. So I'll go to Insert, Text Box, and I'll just draw a text box onto my page just here. Now, again, we are going to need to change the text wrapping of this, because obviously at the minute it's in front of the text, so we can go through and change it to maybe square, so you can see now that the text is moving around the outside of the box. If at any point you notice you think actually that text is a little bit close to that box, I maybe want a little bit more of a margin around the outside so that text isn't coming as close, we can go into that text wrapping, and we can go into more options, and we can actually specify the distance from text. So when you increase these options, it's going to increase that margin so that text doesn't get quite as close, and you've noticed it will automatically move it away slightly like that. We can then put in, again, I'm just going to put in some placeholder text, and obviously we can format that how we wanted it. So maybe I'll just change the color, and maybe I'll make it italics as well. There we go, maybe slightly larger. There we go. And I'm also going to remove the outline of that text box. So back to shape format, shape outline, and then we'll remove that outline there. There we go. Now, to make it a little bit more like a quote, we're going to add quotation symbols either side of it. And that again is on the Insert tab. So a minute ago, we looked at inserting an image from this device and also from stock images. Another really great option that's been added to Word in the last few years is icons. So perhaps you're not really looking for like a particular image, but you're just looking for a little icon, maybe to use in a bullet point, or again just a little something on a page. Then we can click icons, and in here we've got all of these, and again you can search at the top. So if I search for I can't remember if they're under quote or under speech. There we go. So quote, and then I can grab these, insert, and again I can just pop those. Oops, just change the text wrapping to square, and I can drag those up to the top here, make those a bit smaller. And I can change the fill color of these as well. So under the graphics format, the graphics fill, we can again use that purple. And then I can just copy and paste that one. And I can flip it so it's the other way around. There we go. So obviously I could play around with that a little bit more, but that gives you, an idea of what we could have that quote box looking like. And the other thing I would recommend doing is just grouping those elements together into a single item. At the moment, it's 3 elements, so it's that quote symbol, the actual text box, and the other quote symbol. So if someone was in here and editing it and they wanted to move it around, everything's going to go everywhere. So the best thing to do would be to select each of those 3 elements. So I'll just hold down the control key and select those. Oops. And then I'll just right click and we can group those together. And at least now it's a single item, so it's a little bit easier for me to move that around on the page. I can still go in and edit the text, but it's easier for me to move that as a group instead. The other advantage of grouping this, so if this is the sort of document that you're looking to create and you think actually it's more of a, like a marketing template or a brochure, and it might be that individuals are going to have multiple pages and they're going to want more quotes, and they want more quote boxes. Of course, people will be able to copy and paste, so we can just, copy and paste this one like that, and they can put another one on the page or onto a different page. The other option with your graphics, and particularly if you didn't want to have everything on the template, so actually quote boxes aren't very common. I don't want them included because a lot of people are going to be deleting them, but I do want an easy option for someone just to be able to click a couple of buttons and it inserts a quote box for them, is to save it as something called a quick part. So if I select this group and go to insert, there's this quick parts here. You might have used it before. Some people use it for things like signatures or other kind of document parts. And I can select save selection to quick part gallery. I can give it a name, so I can call it something like quote box. And I can also make sure that I'm saving it within this particular template. And if I click OK, that will then save it in that quick parts area. So all someone would need to do is go to insert, quick parts, and they can insert that quote box onto the page. You can also, if you think, oh, okay, that's fine, but it's maybe a little bit tricky for someone to find, you can add that quick parts onto your quick access toolbar at the top here. So we can right click and then add to quick access toolbar, and it just gives users that box there. They would have to do it individually, but it will give users that option just to click on that and add it in onto the page. I don't know where that's gone. Let's go here. For some reason it's not adding it. That's strange. Try it again. It worked the other day. It should be there. Try it once more. Strange. I'll have a look at that after today's session. When I tried it the other day, it worked. But anyway, you should be able to save those as quick parts. Click on that option or on the quick parts in the insert tab and insert that into your document. Or if you're familiar with things like macros, you could set up a button with a macro that just says, insert quote box, and people could insert that onto the page. And obviously, you could do that with quote boxes, images, tables, whatever it is you're looking to allow users to be able to add. We'll edit the header while we're here as well. So we added just the basic text last week. So placeholder for the document title. We also added an automatically updating date so that when the document's created, it uses today's date. So I'll just double click into that header area. And what we'll do is we'll add in the KISS logo. So again, we'll go to insert, we'll go to pictures, this device. And again, I'll just go to, now it loads my graphics that I was looking for earlier. I'll just go into gallery and grab one of the logos from here. Let's just use the Digital Academy. We'll insert that one. There we go. And again, I can use the square wrapping and drop that over the right hand side. And I might just crop that a little bit because we've got that white space in there. There we go. And again, those options that we used earlier, like the grayscale, like the transparency, particularly if you're looking at header and footer, you don't want it to be a really bold image, so you can make that a little bit more transparent. And I'm also just going to add a line at the bottom of my header here just to separate it from the main document. So we're going to insert shapes and then we'll insert a line. Really nice tip when you are adding a line onto a document. Sometimes you have the problem with, I've seen this in PowerPoint as well, when people are trying to draw diagrams or arrows, is sometimes it's very hard to make that arrow straight. So you're clicking and dragging to draw it and it's slightly off and it's slightly at an angle. If you hold the shift key, so I'm holding down the shift key, and when I drag that line or that arrow or whatever it is you're drawing, it will just make sure that that is absolutely straight. It works vertically as well. So yeah, hold down shift, and then it will make sure that it's completely straight. Again, you can see the placeholders coming into effect here. Let's hold down the shift key and make that a bit longer. The other options you've got, so we looked at kind of those exact options for the position. So we can come in here and we can set it up, for example, exactly relative to the margin. You've also got exact options for size as well. So we can put in the exact size, or if we open up the additional size options, we can make it, for example, 100% relative to the margin, which means that it will be exactly like the width between the two margins on the page. So that's another way, as well as using the placeholders, just to make sure that you've got that positioning and that size exactly correct. So maybe we'll make that our purple as well. So I'll just double click outside of that, and that saved our header. Other graphic options, so again, just to run through a few other options, like I said, it won't be that you would put every single one of these onto your template, but if it's something that you're looking for, you have got you could create a standout paragraph style. So for example, if I wanted, maybe I could apply it to this paragraph here, we could select the paragraph. I could go into my my design option and go into page borders, and I'll go into shading, and we can shade that paragraph, so we can change the fill color and make sure that we're applying it to the whole paragraph rather than just the text. If it's the text, it would only apply to the characters. So if you had a line of text that was maybe only halfway across the page, it would stop halfway across the page. If you're applying it to the whole paragraph, it makes sure that that goes all the way across the page. And we could click OK, and it gives that effect there. Maybe I'll just make that bold as well so that we can see it a bit more easily. And again, we could save that as a style. So like we did in the first session, we can select the text. We can click our arrow to the right side of the styles area in the Home tab. We can create a style. So we could call it, I don't know, focus paragraph or something. And when I go in and modify it, we can make sure that style for the following paragraph is going to be normal. So if you remember back to the first week, we said that field there, style for the following paragraph, means that if you press enter to move to the next paragraph, it's what style that next paragraph is going to be. So you might have noticed it automatically set it to the same, but it's highly likely if someone's typed one paragraph like that, pressed enter, they would then want to just return back to the normal style. Start setting that up in there. And again, like we looked at in the first session, we could go in and set in indents. Maybe we could indent it a little bit as well, and add, borders, paragraph settings. But we'll leave it as that, and we'll make sure that it's saved to the template too. We'll click OK. And again, that will now sit up at the top there. So very easy for users just to, if they just have maybe a sentence on its own, to go in and select that sentence or paragraph and apply that style. Okay, so that's another option, is creating like more of a paragraph style to draw a focus to particular text or particular points. The other option, not quite as common, is columns. So if I just put in some just some paragraphs, just so I can show you what this will look like. So if we're looking to add columns, we would select the text where we want those columns to be applied, and we'll go to layout, columns, and then we can choose how many columns we want to apply. Or under more columns, you've got exact options for width and spacing. So the default options, so 2 will create 2 like identically sized columns, 3 will create 3 identical columns. But if you were looking to say, actually, I want the first column to be larger and then I want a bit of a smaller gap between the two, we can set that up here with the exact measurements. And I can even put a line between the columns as well. You can't format that line, so it will just be a plain black line. You can't change the color of it or make it a dashed line or anything like that, but it will just pop a line between any columns. But I'll just go for a basic 2 column. Now, what's important to note with your columns is if I go back to my home tab and turn on my paragraph marks, it actually sets up, it works almost as its own section. And when you are looking at editing the text within that column, you can use an additional break that we didn't look at last week, which is a column break. A column break moves the text to the top of the next column. So if I've got, I'll just pop it onto its own page so that it's a bit easier to see. If I've got this text here in my 2 columns, and let's say this paragraph, it starts quite low down at the bottom of the first column. Perhaps I just want to move this whole column, the whole paragraph, so that it starts on the next column. Rather than pressing enter, 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 which we talked about in the last sessions, that we shouldn't do that, because if we edit the rest of our text, it's going to move that even further down. We would use a column break. So I'd click at the start of the paragraph here. I go to breaks and then column, and you can see there that it's inserted that column break, and then it's moved that paragraph so that it starts at the top of the next column. If I want to remove the columns, you would just select the text. I'll get rid of that page break in a minute, and I would set that to 1, and then it will just remove those columns, get rid of that column break as well. You can see it's put that section break in there too, so we'll just get rid of that. Okay, but I'm not going to use columns in this one, so we'll just hide that away. There we go. The other thing we can insert is tables. So if I go to insert and then table, we can set up just a placeholder table in here, so you can choose how many rows and how many columns. And again, just like we had with our graphics, whenever we click inside or select the table, we have additional tabs in our ribbons. We've actually got 2. We've got our table design, which is more to do with the overall appearance, the shading and the borders. And then we've got the table layout, which is more to do with like the rows and columns and the heights and the widths. So it might be, again, that you're not even putting any text onto it, but that you're just going in and formatting that, and maybe using some of your branding colors to make sure that if it is a document where users are regularly going to be putting in tables, that they've already got that set up for them, rather than having to start from scratch. So again, we can go in and you've got options for table styles in here. We have shading options, so it might be, for example, that maybe I want to format it maybe like this one, but maybe I want the first row to be a different color, so we can go in and maybe fill it in like that. And we can also set up whether we want the header rows to be formatted differently to the remaining rows. Likewise, whether we want that first column to be formatted differently to the remaining columns. You will start to notice that when you're actually adding in the text. So if I show you here, you'll notice that these two are in bold. So because I've got this header row turned on, the text is going to be formatted as bold in the first header, in the first row. And because I have that first column turned on, it's going to be formatted as bold in that first column. If I turn that off, the first column, you'll notice that it's turning off that bold formatting. So that's what those tick boxes do there. Of course, you could go in and manually kind of turn that bold on and off yourself as well. So then we've got shading options, borders, and in the layout is where you can actually go in and add and remove rows. But again, it's just like a little placeholder that we can add in for users to go in and add their own data. That's obviously hopefully given you a few options, a bit of an introduction to some of the graphics within the document. So we have the borders, the text boxes for kind of the placeholders, inserting the graphics, adding the logo and the kind of the little line at the bottom of the header. We've got the options of inserting the quote box, the idea of potentially using styles not just for titles and subheadings and numbered items, but also for drawing attention to particular text or particular paragraphs. The ability to use either your own images or stock images, and then going in and using that picture format just to make them look slightly more professional, whether that's a grayscale, maybe that's a little bit of a transparency without going overboard. And then anything else, so if you wanted columns or tables, for example. Now, in terms of kind of, let's say this is our finished template. Okay, I'm happy with it for now. What I want to do is start rolling it out to users and having people able to access it and edit it. You might have remembered right back at the start in our first session, I actually saved this as a specific file format. So I'm just going to quickly save it now before I accidentally delete anything. So when I went to File, Save As, I made sure I saved it as a Word template. So what that means is when I want to edit the template, so if I just grab my desktop over here, so I would have to right click and open, and then that would open it like this, and I'd make any changes to the template itself, and then I can save those changes to the template. For an individual user, if we were saving this template in a shared drive, for example, then they would double click onto the template file and it will open as a new document. So what that means is they're not opening the template themselves in that they're editing or overwriting the template. It's opening as document 1 or document 2. They're going in, making their changes, and when they click save, it's forcing them to save that document as a new file. Okay, so one of the most common questions I get is, I've set up this template, it looked great, but then, you know, so and so from this department went in and added their information, and now when anyone opens the template, it's got all of their text in and we've lost the original template. So that's the first thing, is if you are saving it within like a shared drive, we're making sure we're actually saving it as a Word template, and then users are going to be forced to do like a file save as, and it stops them overwriting the template. Having said that, there are other options. So let's just switch that back. So in terms of saving the template, we have to think about the save location. So it might be that we want to use a shared drive. It might be that you're saving it to a document management system. It might be that you are using a SharePoint site or Teams, and you want people to be able to easily go into the SharePoint site or into Teams, select that template and just open it directly from there. There's also another option, which I'll show you in a moment, which actually embeds that template directly in Microsoft Word. So when users are opening Word and they click New, there's the option to navigate to any templates that are saved in that area, so they're just selecting them directly from within Word. So it's more about what works for you and how your team is used to working, and obviously also thinking about things like permissions. So depending on which one of those locations you choose, it might be that you need to set up additional permissions as well, which I'll talk about in a moment, because obviously you want to make sure that if it is a template that people can easily change, then are you able to go in and say, right, X, Y, and Z can go in and change it, but everyone else is only going to be able to kind of open it and do like a file save as for their own version. So we'll talk about those in a moment. Also just wanted to mention at this point, once you have that finished template, obviously making sure that you've got what you need in there, your styles, any graphics, your table of contents, everything that we've covered. That sample text, so in my example, I just put in some generic word text, but it might be that that sample text you're including within your template is more of pointers. It might be an introduction to the template itself. It might be some common paragraphs that people use that they can just insert or remove if they don't need them. It's great to have examples of styles in there as well, even if it's just a placeholder, because again, styles is an area that people often aren't that confident with. So giving them an option to go in, some people, even if people are just copying and pasting those styles throughout the document so that they're able to apply those, and then, like I said, any additional content. So in terms of saving and accessing that template, like I mentioned, one of those options is within a shared drive, so in a network drive, for example, making sure then when you are saving that document, we're saving it as a Word template, not just a normal Word document. And like I said, when users double click to open that file, when they click save, they're forced to save it as a new document. For anyone who's looking to edit the template themselves, you would need to right click and open, and when you do that, that automatic save is turned off. So you would have to go in and do like a file save when you wanted to update that template with your changes. So that's one option. Obviously, downsides of that, technically anyone could go in and right click edit or right click open, sorry. So those permissions aren't quite as clear. It is still possible for someone to go in and edit the template, but that's certainly one option that's quite commonly used. Storing a template on SharePoint or Teams. So if you either have a SharePoint site that you're using, or you're using like a document library within Teams, which in the background is SharePoint, there is the ability to go in and add templates. So for this one, the file must actually be a docx, so it's not a Word template, it's just a normal Word document. That would be your file type. You would go into your document library, whether that's in Teams or whether it's within your SharePoint site, and the new button at the top, where you would normally use to create, a new folder, for example, you would choose the option to add a template. It then gives you the option to select the template, so you select it from your computer. Like I said, it must be that docx file format, and then the next time someone goes in and clicks that new button, as well as being able to do everything else like create a new folder, create a new document, they will also see that template that you've uploaded as well. So they can just click on that button and then it would create that document from that template for them without changing the template itself. A couple of things to note for that one is that the individual uploading the template must have the correct permissions within the team or the SharePoint site. So you must have the contribute or edit permissions or higher. If you've just got like read-only permissions, then you won't be able to do it. Also with this one, it's not as quick and easy to make changes to that template itself. So if I wanted to go in and maybe change one of the styles or change how the table of contents is configured, it's not as easy as that shared drive where I'm just right clicking open, making the changes and hitting save. I would need to either have a copy of that template on my laptop or re-download it, make the changes and then upload it again. So it takes a little bit more time, but it's obviously makes it harder for other people to edit that template, and a lot easier to access if you're already working within Teams and SharePoint anyway. The other option, and perhaps the best option in that it's so easy for users to access, is to save it as an Office template through like a SharePoint admin site. What this allows you to do is when individuals open Word, they would click New, and then they'll be able to go, if I just quickly show you, if I just open Word in here, so File New. So here you have the name of your organization. You can then group the templates. So if I go into technical, all of the templates that have been uploaded, I can just easily access and click on them from here to open them. Okay, so obviously really easy from a user perspective. A little bit more difficult to set up in that it would need a SharePoint administrator to do that. So within your organization, you need a SharePoint administrator. You would need to send them the template that you've created. They add it essentially to a document library on a SharePoint site. And they register that library as something called an organization asset library. Once that's done, Word will automatically look within that area for any templates and automatically display them in Word for each user within that organization. Another downside is that changes can take up to 24 hours to appear. So if you made a change to a template and you've sent it that SharePoint administrator to re-upload, it might be that it takes a day for those users to be able to see that edited template. But like I said, brilliant advantage is that it's right there within Word. Users are not going to have to go into a shared drive or try and find the button on the SharePoint site. It's open when they open in Word, and also obviously impossible for them to go in and edit because they're literally clicking on that template and they can just go in and edit it, and then it's forcing them to save it as a new document, so they're not going to overwrite that template. And then what's next after that? You've created your template, you've made it available for users to start accessing. I would always strongly recommend at least some training, some form of training for use of templates, even if that's a one-page user guide or a 3-minute video that you send to everyone. The main areas of training that I find users can sometimes struggle with is the styles, so how to access those styles, how to apply those styles, and also section breaks. So if you do have any section breaks in your template, making sure that you can tell users where they are or how to view them, how to not accidentally delete them, the importance of them, and also how to recognize if they have been deleted. So for example, suddenly I have a header on my first page and I shouldn't have a header on my first page, and that could be because they've accidentally deleted that section break that was separating those two different sections with headers. So that's also really important as well, and any additional kind of content that they might need to insert, as well as any general branding guidelines. So just highlighting to people, stick to the colors in here, try and stick to the branding that we've used within this template. Also, as important is feedback. So at the end of the day, you could create the best template in the world, but when individual users go in and access it, it might be that actually what they're using it for doesn't quite add up with what you've done, or you might find that you've created a template with a table on it and only 1% of the users are using the table, so it's something they're having to delete every single time, which is a real pain. So encouraging that feedback and that open conversation, particularly at first launch and for the first few weeks, to make sure that you can go in and edit that template where needed. And again, any improvements or updates, it might be that you thought you could do everything with 1 or 2 templates, but maybe actually you need a few more than that for different situations, different teams. So yeah, just keeping that on like a rolling basis and making sure that they're always up to date, because if you put that much time and effort into creating a template, what you don't want a few months down the line is to find actually no one's using it anymore, we're just going to go away and just make our own documents from scratch, which obviously defeats the purpose. So